Hello everyone, today I'm going to present our paper titled What Do We Mean When We Talk About Trust in Social Media? A systematic review. Social media has become an essential part of people's daily routines, and people have to decide which social media platforms, information, and users they can trust and should trust. Well, over the past 2 decades, we have seen an increasing number of news articles, reports, and publications investigating this topic. As this body of work has grown, we also notice some challenges. First, defining the concept of trust and characterizing how it is formed and how to measure is complex. So this complexity is evidenced by the lack of consensus on the meaning of trust in the context of social media. And also, there are several other terms like distrust and mistrust, the two related concepts to trust, add another layer of complexity. But we also need to disambiguate these terms and concepts in order to produce more rigorous research. And second, the conflicting results from prior research regarding what factors can influence trust and the impacts of trust on people's behaviors and attitudes create another layer of the challenges. So having these research challenges in mind, we ask the following research questions in this work. First, how has existing work conceptualized and defined trust concepts in the context of social media? When I say trust concepts, it refers to the concepts of trust, distrust, and mistrust. And how are trust concepts in social media measured empirically? What are antecedents of trust concepts in social media, where we say factors that may influence trust, as well as what are the consequences of trust concepts in social media? To answer those questions, we did a systematic review on this topic. Specifically, our review includes the following steps. We first developed a search strategy and did a literature search. A total of 6 databases were included. After removing duplicate records, we continued the screening processes, including the title and abstract screening, by screening the titles and abstracts of all the papers, and then finally a full text screening and analysis. A total of 70 papers were included in this review. Now I'm going to share some of our findings. So we firstly go through some overall findings about the study design of existing work. Most studies use a single research method and a few use the multiple research methods. Now, overall, the survey is the most commonly used method, followed by the experiment design, and very few studies use qualitative interview method. In terms of the overall time periods of studies, most studies were single time point research, meaning research carried out over a single period of time, and only 3 studies gathered data in 2 waves of measurement. In terms of which social media platforms have been most and the least studies, we see most studies focused on a specific platform, whereas the rest address the social media as a general concept. Among the specific platforms examined, Facebook was by far the most commonly reported individual platform, followed by Twitter and WeChat. We also analyzed the characteristics of studied populations, and please refer our paper for more details. In terms of how existing work conceptualized and defined trust in social media, and here's one quick psychic diagram that illustrates the overall flows of trust definitions and provided in our survey papers. So some of the quick takeaways include, we see more than half of the studies did not define trust. And among those papers that did define it, very few studies provided tailored definitions of trust in the context of social media, making the concept of trust ambiguous. And then trust has been mostly conceptualized the willingness to do something. And next, we've analyzed how trust is being measured. So first, our results show that most studies fail to map their definitions of trust to the measurements, hurting the construct validity. For example, willingness has been mostly used in our corpus and to conceptualize trust. So the measurements intuitively should, at least in part, include a measurement of participants' willingness. However, surprisingly, none of the studies in our corpus specifically measured this. And moreover, how we measure trust in the context of social media depends on what kind of trustee we talk about. By trustee, I mean the party or the object to be trusted. There are three kinds of trustee here, such as the information from social media users and groups, and social media platforms. So many studies in our corpus imprecisely mention the trustee and further ambiguating their measurements. And moreover, we find that most studies use a single item measurement of trust, for example, simply by just asking, do you trust anything, rather than multiple item measurement, although trust is a multidimensional phenomenon. I'll also refer to our paper for more details regarding how trust is measured. And now we turn to the antithesis of trust in social media, where we say factors that can influence trust. So we categorize these factors into three broader categories. One is the truster demographics. These are the factors related to specific characteristics of the truster participants. And also the truster and trustee interaction, in which that means that the factors related to the interaction and or the relationship between the truster and trustee, as well as the trustee characteristics, which are the factors related to specific characteristics of the trustee. And here's an overview of antithesis of trust in social media. And for the sake of time, please refer to our paper for more details. And similarly, you can also check our paper for a more comprehensive list of factors that can influence trust, as well as the consequences of trust in social media, such as how trust in social media influence people's online and offline behaviors and attitudes. So moving forward, here are some of our suggestions for future work. And first, in terms of the study design, we suggest that it is important to shift our attention to the temporal facets of trust in the context of social media. So given that the trust and information from the social media, the users and platforms does not necessarily remain static and it changes over time. It is also essential to evaluate this evolution of the relationship between the truster and the trustee and the long-term effects of trust. And the second, for future work, to may consider to expand the platforms in addition to the most commonly examined platforms like Facebook and Twitter. And third, we also suggest future work considering alternative methods like qualitative and mixed methods to examine this complex research topic, rather than defaulting to the most commonly used approach, surveys. Our suggestions about how to operationalize trust include, for example, future work should clearly specify the context and the trustee or the object of trust in the definition of trust. And we also advocate for future research to ensure that trust definitions well aligned with and guide the trust measurement used in each study as proper translation of the trust into assessment into the research is important to ensure construct validity. Also, considering trust as a complex and a multidimensional concept, we suggest future work use multiple dimensions to adequately capture trust rather than just simply asking, do you trust something? We also suggest future work examine more other research directions, such as mechanism towards distrust. So what are the aspects of distrust and how to measure distrust if we argue that trust and distrust are two different concepts. But for now, very little work has focused on distrust. Also, in the context of social media where multiple trustees exist, trust can be transferred, meaning that an individual's trust in one entity can be derived from trust in another entity, like from the content to the platform. And understanding the mechanisms of antithesis of trust transference phenomena will help future work develop more strategies to promote or impede trust transference. So by that, I will end my presentation. Happy to take the question.